What is really the hardest Five Nights at Freddy's game of all time? Hopeless Pursuit? One Night at Frogger's? Who really knows for sure? But I think when people think of that question, they tend to think strictly about max modes, which I think is a little disingenuous. I think there's a big difference between the hardest FNAF game and the hardest max mode. For example, I think FNAF 1 is much harder than FNAF 4, but FNAF 4's max mode is undoubtedly harder than FNAF 1's max mode. So saying FNAF 4 is harder than FNAF 1 just doesn't really make sense. And when you look at challenging FNAF games in that way, which is the most challenging all the way through? I think we all know the one single FNAF game that comes to mind. It needs no introduction, and I've been getting asked to play it for over a year at this point. That game is Post Shift 2 pre-patch version 1.0.0. I never wanted to make this video, yet here I am. This is by far the longest, most painful video I have ever made. So shut up, relax, as we jump right in to Post Shift 2. Before we even start talking about Night 1, there's something I need to get out of the way. I'm sure everybody already knows, but this game is literally massive. So big, in fact, that the developer had to export the game in 2 separate files since the entire thing couldn't be exported in one. Another thing I want to get out of the way really early is that I'm going to be very negative in this video. What else is new, right? But I do want to make it clear before I even say anything is that just because I say mean things about this game doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. People call it the hardest FNAF game ever made, even knowing that there are a whole lot more that are more difficult. This game earned that title for a reason, and it's not because it's a bad game. It was made by one guy over the span of 3 years. That is impressive, and this game is impressive. All right, now that I got that out of the way, and we know Reddit is going to ignore it when they bitch and moan about me not stroking the dick of every game I cover, we can actually start talking about the game the way I would any other game. Let's just start off by talking about the sheer size of the map in this game. The first 3 nights take place in an area of the game called Aisle 1. Apparently, just staying in the office with our feet nailed to the floor was just too easy, so now we have to walk around the whole fucking building as slowly as possible. I'll get to that in a second. Let's go over the room that will actually be starting in first. It's called the souvenirs area, and it's completely worthless as pretty much nothing happens here. However, it is in this room where we're greeted to hands down the most terrifying thing in this entire game. This massive fucking text box. This text box right here is how the game explains its mechanics to you. No phone call, no figuring it out for yourself, just dropping a goddamn novel on you and expecting you to read the whole thing. You might think to yourself, you know, I play a lot of FNAF games. I'm sure I don't actually need to read this. I'm sure I'll be able to figure it out. No, the fuck you won't. This is hands down the most confusing game I've ever played in my entire life. I'm both excited to talk about it and not excited to talk about it because, oh my god, I want to complain, but my poor little fingers are going to kill me since I'm going to be writing this entire video in one sitting, and I quite literally type out every single word that I read in these videos. The only place you can go from this room is the aisle end. Hands down, the most important room throughout this game. This is because it connects directly to 2 other incredibly important rooms, the sanitation room and the construction room. The sanitation room is to the left and the construction room is to the right. It's about right now where I want to talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to talking about moving in this game. That being long as fuck, shit ass, fuck ass animations that play whenever you want to go anywhere. It's almost like every time the player moves, an earthquake that levels a 5 on the Richter scale goes off, causing our player to shake and jolt their head in every possible direction, making me so motion sick I was unable to beat this game myself without throwing up. And no, I'm not joking. This is quite literally the reason I avoided this game for so long, and yes, I seriously didn't beat it because I was getting so sick from these animations. And the best part? These animations take so long to play out, and the map is large so that a majority of the time when you need to respond to something quickly on the other side of the map, it'll take a solid 30 seconds to do that, making your blood pressure go through the roof every single time. To get to the sanitation room, like I said, you have to go left from the aisle end. However, you don't just have to sit through one movement movement animation, you actually have to sit through 2 because the first room you enter is a filler room and is literally completely fucking useless. Guys, I'm already mad and we've only just begun. And of course, once you actually get to the sanitation room, you're hit with another text box the size of your mom's ass. Now, getting to the construction room, I'll tell you, is actually pretty funny. Once again, like I've already said, all you have to do is turn right from the aisle end, and this time you don't have to go through a useless room. Once you get to the construction room, you have the option of going into a back room area of the construction room. However, it's useless. So useless, in fact, that the game actually tells you that you should never go there because there's quite literally no point. So like, why the fuck did you even add it, bro? What were you thinking? But even then, we're still not done talking about the map. I'm almost done with the 3rd page of this script, and I haven't even finished talking about the places we can go yet. I get the sneaking suspicion this is going to be a really long one, guys. Buckle up. Going back to the aisle end, we can turn around to enter the temporary aisle. From there, we can move forward into another section of the temporary aisle. And this section, and only this section of the temporary aisle, can we look in between some shelves to see if there are any animatronics getting ready to finger my butt. But I'm going to talk about those characters a bit later. We still have a lot more to talk about first. From there, we can move forward into the promotional area. And finally, from this area, we can turn left and check if any characters are holding the lube in their hands, looking at me up and down and licking their lips and shit. With the building being out of the way now, we have to bring up something very important. That being, how do we actually complete this night? Because unlike most FNAF games, this game decided to be a little bit different in quite literally the worst way possible. In order to complete a night in Post Shift 2, you actually have to do 2 things. The first is pretty simple, just survive until 6 a.m. However, the next thing you have to do really makes that first task seem pretty pointless. You have to complete 3 different tasks around the building using something you have called a halfless repair drone. And this drone is controlled by our employee maintenance monitor, or EMM as I will be referring to it from now on. Now, we need to just take a second to relax. Guys, if you're not ready for some old school, classic dxtrwhite complaining, I highly suggest you come back to this video a bit later because that's going to be what approximately the remaining of this video is going to be. The requirement of using your EMM to complete tasks brings up hands down the biggest problem this game has to offer. It tells you literally fucking nothing. Do you want to know how to open the EMM? Well, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is hover over and click the left corner of your screen. Dexter, is that the top or bottom corner? Would you believe me if I told you the game didn't tell you? And better yet, would you believe me if I told you that quite literally the only time it tells you how to open the EMM is in the first room of the game in 1 sentence in a giant paragraph of text and literally never again? Would you believe me if I said that? Well, you should, because that's literally what happens. How in the name of fuck did the developer think that this was a good way to explain this to the player? Once you leave this room for the first time, this guide will never appear again. So if you either don't read that sentence or forget what it said, you're just not even going to know what the EMM is. This is insanity. But maybe I'm nitpicking, even though I know I'm not. Let's continue. Just kidding. I'm still not done complaining yet. Do you want to know something even worse than what I just told you? After you manage to open up the EMM, the game doesn't tell you that the repair drones are important. Well, it kind of does, but it doesn't make it obvious. The only place this game tells you that the drone is important is after you click the drone repair button. Then, once in the repair drone menu, if you look at the text box on the side, only in the 3rd paragraph does it tell you that this drone is required to complete the night. Actually, what the fuck is going on right now? Someone tell me I'm not over-exaggerating. This is terrible. You people wanted me to play this. Why? However, at least the drone tasks we have to complete are super easy. The length of the nights in this game are 6 minutes and 30 seconds, so not that bad at all. A lot better than what I was actually expecting. All 3 drone tasks you have to complete are the same and really don't require you to do anything at all. All you have to do is open the EMM, go to the repair drone, view, and then start repairing. The repair process will take place in the background while you do whatever else it is you need to do. Each task takes 1 minute and 15 seconds to complete, and once it's done, you can go back into the menu and start the next task. After doing all 3 and surviving until 6 a.m., we can move on to night 2. But wait, haven't you forgotten? We're playing a FNAF game, and I still have yet to mention a single animatronic, even though we're over 10 minutes into this video. Is that not crazy? We're this far in, and I haven't even said a character's name yet. Well, No better time than the present, that is what they say. This night introduces 3 main threats, the first being Revenant Freddy. He's probably the easiest of the 3 characters that are introduced on this night. To start, he will appear in the promotional room leaning up against a shelf. When he's here, we really don't have to worry, as the game tells us that this just means he's getting ready to attack us. When he enters this phase, one of 2 random sound cues will play, and they sound like this. Now we get to talk about how stupid the rest of the way Revenant Freddy attacks really is. Once Revenant Freddy decides to attack us, he will move to the other part of the promotional room, that part being that direction I told you that you can turn in a bit earlier. Once Revenant Freddy is here, that means he's about to kill you. However, for some reason, he plays no sound cue when moving into this position. You know, the position he gets into that actually matters. Yeah, you just have to figure that part out by yourself. Sound cue for something retarded? Yes, please. Sound cue for something important? Nah. Now we get to talk about something else that is incredibly frustrating. That being how to deal with him. The way to do it is simple. Just go to the aisle end, open the EMM, select a drone. No, not the repair drone. This is a different drone. And then target Revenant Freddy and send it off. The actual problem with this is a common recurring theme this game has. Literally never telling us fucking anything at all. In order to learn that this is what we need to do, we need to open the EMM and then click on the drone to read 3 paragraphs. And that's not the end of it. In these 3 paragraphs, where exactly it explains Revenant Freddy is probably a total of 1 to 2 sentences long. What the fuck? Like I already said, Revenant Freddy is the easiest character on this night. We still have 2 more to talk about, and I promise you, both of them are no less confusing. The next character to mention is Minotaur Freddy. What does Minotaur mean? Well, it stands for Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors. Damn. So tell me, Dexter, what does Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy do? I'm so glad you asked. Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy can attack you in 2 different places, in both the sanitation room and the construction room. Let's talk about the construction room attack first. Once Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy arrives there, this sound cue will play. Once that sound cue plays, we need to drop everything we're doing and go to the construction area just so that we can watch Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy climb out of a hole in the floor. Once Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy climbs out of the hole, a 15-second timer will appear on the screen telling us to go to the promotional area. If you don't get to the promotional area by the time that timer runs out, Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy is going to butt bang us, and we just don't want that at all. Once we get to the promotional room in time, we will survive the attack for some reason. I don't really know why this makes us survive, but it does. Cool. Now, what about the other attack that Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy can do? Once again, this attack happens in the sanitation room. Once he appears in this room, another sound cue will play letting us know he's arrived that sounds like this. Now, this attack is where it gets confusing. By the way, if you couldn't tell, both of the sound cues he plays sound exactly the same. They are slightly different, but I highly doubt you'd be able to tell them apart. Here, let's actually play a game. Now that I've shown you both of the sound cues, let's play one of them and you tell me which one it was. All right, did you make your guess as to which room that would mean Micro-Implemented Neural Activated Transferable Energy Rotors Freddy went to? Well, if you said the construction room, you'd be completely fucking wrong, because that's the sound cue he plays when he goes to the sanitation room. Anyways, once he's in the sanitation room and you get there, depending on how fast you got there will change the way this attack will play out. If you got there super quickly after the sound cue went off, when you open this vent, he'll look like he always does. Show up a little later, and for some reason, he'll have a rabbit ear. Why? I really don't fucking know. And if we wait a really long time before opening the vent, he'll look like another character we'll mention later, Revenant Bonnie. Why does he literally transform into another character? I actually have no idea. It makes no sense at all, but let's just deal with it. After seeing which version of micro-implemented neural activated transferable energy rotors Freddy we got, we'll have to open up the EMM and answer 4 questions. These questions being, does your Minotaur have a rabbit ear yet? Does it reside within the cleaning area currently? Does it almost look like a completely different character? And would you like us to revert the Minotaur's form? Obviously, depending on which version of micro-implemented neural activated transferable energy rotors Freddy that appeared, we will have to answer these questions differently. But if we answer them all correctly, then micro-implemented neural activated transferable energy rotors Freddy will leave and we'll be safe to continue doing what we were doing. And by the way, don't worry, I'll stop saying the full acronym now. I'll just be calling him Minotaur Freddy from now on. Now we get to talk about the final and most annoying threat this night introduces, Minotaur Foxy. Holy shit, this guy actually sucks so bad, it's hard to breathe just thinking about him. Minotaur Foxy, like Minotaur Freddy, can attack from 2 different places. He can either go to the promotional area or can go to that special place in the shelves we can look through in the temporary aisle. In both locations, you have to deal with him in the same way. It's just finding him that's the problem. Speaking of, once he spawns, he'll play this sound cue. Once we find Minotaur Foxy, all we have to do is open up the EMM and select Voice Constructor. From here, we will be given a sentence output. We will have to reconstruct this given sentence using the 12 buttons in the middle of the screen. The sentence we have to reconstruct will be different every attack, and this game insists on making this as difficult as possible. For example, a common phrase you'll see is "to please." However, the button you need to press uses the number 2, while the sentence will always read TWO spelled out. It's confusing for the sake of being confusing, and I fucking hate that. Also, I'm sure it's obvious, but none of the ways we defend ourselves from characters in this game make any sense at all. I'm not going to waste your guys' time by talking about how they don't make sense every time we bring up a character, but just know I do think they're all stupid. Also, just one more thing I want to complain about before we move on. This game tells you that the stupid shelf place exists and that Minotaur Foxy can appear there literally in 1 sentence in the middle of a text box in the tutorial. This is by far the biggest problem this game has. I know I've said it a lot, but it just doesn't fucking tell you anything at all. One more thing I have to mention before we move on are the bonus objectives in this game, because of course this game has those. 2 of the bonus objectives on this night are quite literally impossible to miss as long as the night is completed. Those tasks being survive Revenant Freddy twice and survive Minotaur Foxy once. And that will always happen on the first night, so you don't even have to think about it. The only other 2 tasks on this night can be failed, however, it's pretty unlikely that you will. The first requires us to beat the night optimally, and there's actually something in the night that tells you how optimal the night has been so far. And the way you keep it optimal is just by doing the drone tasks as fast as possible. The only other objective on this night is completing the night at 6 AM with less than 10 excess seconds. This is referring to the fact that after you reach 6 AM, the night won't end until you finish your tasks. Once you reach 6 AM, the game will start an excess seconds timer. So as long as you complete all 3 of the drone tasks before 6 AM happens, then you'll complete this objective, which, considering the tasks only take 1 minute and 15 seconds and the night is 6 minutes and 30 seconds long, this really shouldn't be a problem. Alright, with all of that out of the way, it's finally time to move on to night 2. Holy shit. We're just over halfway through the length of a normal dxtrwhite video, and we're only on to night 2. Editor, I'm so sorry. Night 2 is completed in the exact same way as night 1. Finish all 3 repair drone tasks and survive until 6 AM. However, for some reason, night 2 is 7 minutes long instead of 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Why is this the case? I have no idea. But don't let yourself get fooled into thinking this night is going to be as easy as night 1, because it's not at all. Because the AI ramping of these characters is actually ridiculous. And on top of that, we actually get 2 more characters thrown on us as well. The first threat introduced on this night is Minotaur Baby, and she is probably the easiest out of all the animatronics we've seen so far. Occasionally throughout the night, you will hear this sound cue. This tells us that Miniature Baby has appeared in the souvenirs area. Yeah, I kind of lied before when I said this room was useless. Miniature Baby is actually the only reason it isn't useless. Something about Miniature Baby is that she is way more forgiving than every other character in this game. Once you hear her sound cue play, you have a good 40 seconds before she actually kills you, giving you plenty of time to check for all other characters before going over to deal with her. The way we deal with her also isn't too hard. Once we see her standing in the corner, all we have to do is open up the EMM and go to the Emotion State tab. Once in this tab, we will press the Run Memories button, and then we can start cycling through Baby's memories. Once we find one that is happy and not depressing, we will have to lock that memory, and that will make Miniature Baby go away. Of course, this game has to follow the pattern of not teaching us a fucking thing, as this game neglects to tell us which of her 10 possible memories are positive. Spoiler alert, only 3 of them are, and this is what they look like. What about these images scream positive? I have no fucking idea, but you're just meant to figure it out, as once again, the game literally doesn't tell you ever. All it does say is that some memories have the possibility of being positive. So it seems that even the dev doesn't know why these would be positive. The only other threat introduced on this night is Revenant Bonnie. Not the weird version of Miniature Freddy we saw earlier, I mean just actually Revenant Bonnie this time. The way you know he's about to attack you is very simple, as not only does a really fucking loud sound cue play, but also a counter will appear in the top corner of the screen. Revenant Bonnie wants to play a game called One-Eyed Seek, which is this game's version of a find them on the camera mechanic, because even though there are no cameras in this game, it somehow still finds a way to make the worst fucking thing in the entire world. Once Revenant Bonnie starts his attack, the counter will randomize a number between 1 and 5. This is how many times you'll need to find Bonnie. So if you get lucky, you may only have to do it once, but if you're me, you'll have to do it 5 times every fucking time. Revenant Bonnie can spawn in 5 different areas at random: the souvenir room, the construction room, the hallway before the sanitation room, the second part of the temporary aisle, and then behind the shelf in the temporary aisle. There's no way for you to know which areas he goes to. You literally just have to guess, which, with how long the movement animations take in this game, I can promise you that Revenant Bonnie will quickly become your least favorite character. There's a reason I chose to put him in the thumbnail over anybody else. I fucking hate him. There is only literally one redeeming quality about Revenant Bonnie, and that's during an attack, he will not appear in the same area twice. Everything else about him is still RNG, and that sucks ass. I should also mention that he can be skipped by using a drone, just like Revenant Freddy. However, this drone has an incredibly small chance of actually working. So I mean, I guess do it while you're passing through looking for him, but you probably won't ever see it work. So let's go over all of the RNG that Revenant Bonnie has. Once he spawns, it's random how many times you'll have to find him. From there, it's random where he'll spawn and when he'll spawn there, so you could have him spawn on opposite sides of the map every single time. And on top of that, the item we can use to skip his attack is also completely random. This is amazing, guys. What a skill-based FNAF game. This is definitely a hard game and not just total RNG. And of course, now we get to start talking about the bonus objectives. The first one to get requires even more RNG, that being luring Revenant Bonnie away with the drone, which I just mentioned is incredibly rare to ever happen. So that's just awesome. The next bonus objective is finding both Revenant Freddy and Miniature Foxy in the promotional area. This is also RNG, since the Miniature Foxy only has a 50% chance to appear in the aisle shelf area instead of the promotional area. So yippee, we're gonna be here for the rest of our lives. The last 2 bonus objectives just require us to play like complete dog shit. The first has us complete the night with a lacking efficiency level, meaning that we just need to do the repair tasks really fucking slowly, and the second task being beating the night after we reach 6 a.m. So just let the clock reach 6 a.m. and then finish your last drone task. So these 2 objectives will probably be completed at the same time. Anyways, let's move on to night 3, shall we? The way we beat this night is exactly the same as night 2, so I won't touch on that. But there are another 2 characters added on this night, bringing the total up to 7. Fucking awesome. Love it. The actual threats introduced on this night are Remnant Chica and Remnant Foxy. And before we actually talk about them, I want to bring up something that confused me. For some reason, both Freddy and Bonnie have the name Revenant, while Chica and Foxy use the word Remnant. Why is there this change in their names? I don't have any idea, and from what I read on the wiki, it's not explicitly explained, so we're just gonna ignore it, and if I misspeak for the rest of the video and don't notice, I just don't give a fuck. But if you guys want to have fun, take a shot every time I mess it up. So let's talk about Remnant Chica first, since she's by far the easiest, but that doesn't exactly mean she's easy. And for those of you who have played this game before, you know exactly what I'm talking talking about. Remnant Chica spawns in the construction room, but in the back area of it. Yeah, you know, that area of the construction room that the game itself told us we should never go to because it's useless. Usually I'm the one lying in these videos, but for some reason the game is the one doing the lying this time. Regardless, when Chica spawns, she will make this sound cue.
Lighting alteration detected at construction area.
Once we hear this sound cue, all we have to do is go to that corner of the construction room and stare at the hole in the floor until we see a yellow flash, which, yes, by the way, of course it's random how long this will take. Then after we see it, all we have to do is run back to the aisle end and launch a drone to distract her. So she is basically just Revenant Freddy in a different area. The only reason she's more frustrating than Revenant Freddy is because of where she's located. It takes so fucking long to get over there and so fucking long to get back that if literally any other character spawns while you're dealing with her, you are pretty much guaranteed to lose. The only other threat introduced on this night is of course Remnant Foxy, who, would you believe me, also uses that funny little area in the construction room that the game told us itself was fucking useless. Isn't that just revolutionary? I'm gonna make a FNAF game where the phone guy just fucking lies about how to deal with characters. I can just see it now. 5 Nights with Dexter, where we have a phone guy tell us to close the door on a character, but what we actually have to do is cup our hands below our bare ass, squat down and take a shit in them, then play patty cake with the animatronic at our door. Except we're not gonna tell the player that's what we actually have to do, and we're just gonna hope that they figure out there's a poop patty cake button that's invisible in the corner of the screen until you hover over it with your mouse. God damn it, I hate this fucking game! Anyways, when Remnant Foxy spawns, he'll play this sound cue. When he does, he'll appear in the hole where Remnant Chica appears. You'll have to go over to him and look at him, then just like Remnant Chica, go deploy a drone for him. However, Remnant Foxy also has another possible way to attack us, and that's by crip walking up to us like some of the pedophiles you see on To Catch a Predator. Seriously, look at this predacious walk he has, and tell me he's not using that hook to reel in some kid's ass on the down low. Anyways, once he does walk up to us, we'll have to open up our light module. This is not inside of our EMM. Instead, it's actually another invisible button that the game basically doesn't tell you about in the bottom right corner of the screen. Once you pull this up, all you have to do is press the 3 buttons on it in order, really slowly, and then Remnant Foxy will go away. Again, why does this work? Ride my dick like a bike, that's why. Anyways, those are the only new threats on this night, which means we're free to move on to the bonus objectives. The first and fourth objectives are pretty easy. The first has us complete the night with optimal efficiency, just like night 1, and the fourth requires us to use the drone to get rid of Remnant Foxy. By the way, this has a typo in the menu, so that's cool. The other 2 threats are pretty unique, however. The first tells us to use input lag on our monitor for 3 minutes during the night. I'll talk about that one in just a second because it's really fucking weird. So let's talk about the other one first. The other one being view Remnant Chica before she attacks you. Now, of course, while I was explaining her mechanic, never once did I say that you actually see her, and that's because you don't. However, once you get back to the aisle end, before deploying the drone, you can actually turn around and see Remnant Chica standing behind you. This is all you need to do. So not very difficult at all, but it's kind of cool, I guess. Anyways, now we can talk about the input lag objective, which is really weird. I've neglected to mention something pretty important up until this point, and that's that the EMM actually has a battery life. And the more you use it, the more it decreases because that's just how power works, dumbass. Input lag is a special mode you can put your EMM into that causes your EMM to use less power throughout the night. However, at the expense of your mouse just teleporting somewhere random around the screen at random whenever it feels like it. I've not mentioned this input lag option before either because it's like completely fucking useless, but the objective forces us to use it for at least 3 minutes throughout the night. It actually sounds a lot worse than it actually is, and it makes our shit drain less power, and with how much you'll be using it during this night, that's actually much more helpful than it is hurtful. But with that, we can move on to night 4 and the second part of this game, because if you remember like 800 years ago, I mentioned that this game was too big to fit into a single game. Alright, this is where the game starts to get fucking insane, so really prepare yourself for this. Night 4 introduces a brand new area to the game and a shitload more threats to deal with. This new area is called the Miniature Containment Room or something like that. I can't remember and I'm too lazy to look it up. I know, I'm an amazing YouTuber, aren't I? This area is a lot smaller than the map we've gotten used to, but it's also only used for a single night, so that's probably why. The main room we'll see is the Containment area, in which we can see one of the characters this night introduced introduces Remnant Puppet. Turning to the right, we have some fucking boxes, and turning to the right again, we'll show an area where we can see Remnant Balloon Boy. Going back to the main room, we can look under the desk, and I'll mention why later. And finally, turning to the left from the main room, we can climb up a ladder, which legitimately takes about 6 fucking seconds of animation time. Oh my god. And once we're up here, we have our main view of the place, and we can turn around to look at more fucking boxes. Now we can talk about how we beat this night. Well, that's pretty easy because all we have to do is survive until 6 a.m. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Did I say 6 a.m.? We actually start at 6 a.m. on this night, and for some reason we have to survive until 12. It doesn't really change much, but just thought it was something I should point out. And now is when I have to tell you the news that is going to make your penis burst like a balloon. There are 8 new animatronics on this night. Technically, a few of them we've already seen before, but of course, since we're in a new area, they do something completely different. 8 fucking characters, all brand new mechanics, and I have to learn them. That's it. I'm done. Fuck it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing it. Fuck. Damn it. Not really, of course. Just look at the length of this video. We've still got a long way to go. So let's just rip the band-aid off. So let's start by talking about the most important tool at our disposal during this night, that being the simulation monitors that we can view in the main area. Inside of this simulation is where 4 of the characters are active, these characters being Miniature Baby, Miniature Freddy, Miniature Balloon Boy, and Miniature Ballora. I'm going to talk about all of these 4 characters at the same time since they all pretty much do the exact same thing. Occasionally, any of them inside of the simulation may become pissed off about who knows what and ask you for something. On the side of the screen, you will see we have an inventory of 5 items. So if a character asks us for pizza, for example, then we have to click the pizza to give it to them. And yes, all of the characters in the simulation are humans, but if we fail to give them what they want, they will appear right next to us as animatronics and rail us from the back while using our ponytail like a handle. These 4 characters don't have any sound cues for when they're upset. However, that's where this virtual discontent percentage comes into play. For each character, whenever they get mad, they will increase this percentage by 25. This is how you know you need to go deal with one of them. Not very hard, but they're really just a problem because of the goddamn animations we'll have to deal with. Now we can move on to talking about the 4 remaining animatronics that are always physically right next to us. Let's start by talking about the easiest, that being the Miniaturinas. They appear under the desk, and they only appear if either your surrounding activity or your virtual discontent reach 30%. And once they appear, they will never leave. To prevent them from attacking you, all you have to do is occasionally check on them so they don't kill you. However, let me tell you a little secret. If they ever appear, you should just restart the night because that's a lot easier than having to actually constantly check on these fuckheads. It's a lot more convenient to just make sure these percentages never reach 30%. The next easiest character is a Remnant Balloon Boy, and he's easy because he's just the Miniaturinas, except he's always there. He's located directly behind us, and all we have to do is stare at him to prevent him from moving. So you should really just spend a majority of the night doing exactly that. The next character I want to talk about is Miniature Puppet. Just like pretty much every other character so far, Miniature Puppet also makes no sound cue when she arrives. Instead, you'll be able to tell she's spawned once the surrounding activity increases by 5%. When she does, you'll want to quickly move up the ladder and see her floating in the air, farming aura. Once we stare at Miniature Puppet long enough, another character named Venta Puppet will appear directly in front of us and start exhaling his rank-ass breath right in our face. Once Venta Puppet appears, we'll have to spam click the outer edges of our screen to like escape his grasp or something. I really don't know. And once we do that enough, both of them will leave and our surrounding activity will return to around 10%. And finally, we only have one more threat to talk about, and that is Remnant Puppet. She is by far the most difficult character on this night, so let's just get her out of the way. She will appear on the main monitor directly in front of us, and using this monitor is how we track her location. In stage 1, the monitor will say observe. In stage 2, she will get closer and the monitor will say its name like vowels when there's an E at the end of the word. What? Am I retarded? Bro, I must be losing it. I've been staring at Google Docs for too long because what the fuck did I just write? However, stage 3 is when things get bad. The monitor will change to say I am above, and it's at this time where we need to click the screen a fuck ton of times until the text Y/N shows up. Multiple times means like fucking 30, by the way, so get ready to break your mouse in half. Once the YN text appears, you have to press Y and then move up to the top area of the map. Then we have to turn around and watch the puppet crawl behind the box back into the 9th circle of hell where it came from. And that's it. I said she was the hardest, but that's really just because of how quickly you have to click about 7 million times. With all of the threats out of the way, we can move on to the bonus objectives. And thankfully, 2 of them are super easy. The first has us escape Venta Puppet, which is literally required to beat the night anyways, so that's cool. And the second is dying to Remnant Puppet, which is also not hard. However, the other 2 objectives on this night are actually pretty fucking hard. The first being getting no errors while doing the simulations. That means you can't mess up and give an unhappy character the wrong item, or give a happy character an item at all because they didn't ask for one. This is only hard because understanding which each item is kind of weird since the pictures make no sense. And finally, the hardest objective in both this night and the entire game so far is to not have Remnant Balloon Boy move from his starting position throughout the whole night. This just means we have to stare at this fat, ugly piece of shit for the majority of the night. However, this becomes really difficult when we factor in that this is entirely dependent on RNG and hoping that we don't get attacked by 2 other characters at the exact same time. And that's all Night 4 has to offer. And it's honestly such a nice breath of fresh air compared to the first 3 nights, since aside from that one bonus objective, there's literally no RNG at all and it's completely skill-based. Of course, the game still does a fucking horrible job of explaining anything. I've just kind of stopped mentioning that at this point because if I didn't, it would really quickly become 80% of this entire video. All right, moving on to Night 5, and this is where the game really brings its difficulty to the max. Sure, this entire game has been really fucking hard so far, but Night 5 and especially Night 6 are just completely fucking ridiculous. So let's get right into it. Night 5 only has 4 threats to deal with, but they're all new, and on top of that, we have another massive map to learn. And each character has an entire section of the map dedicated to them. And of course, the game still makes us read a book to understand anything, except the book might as well be in fucking Hebrew because I have no idea what any of it means. The map layout is pretty simple. We have one main hub area, and then in each direction is one of the characters' areas. To the north, we have Freddy, to the east, we have Chica, to the south is Bonnie, and west is Foxy. And yes, if you were wondering, there are incredibly long hallways leading to each area, and yes, the animations that play between them are long as dick and balls. The way we complete Night 5 is by doing 2 tasks. The first being surviving until 6 a.m., which for some reason takes 8 minutes this time. I don't know why time keeps warping in this game, but it does. And the second is completing something this game calls insta-orders. What are insta-orders, I hear you asking? Well, don't ask the game because it does a dog shit, horse shit, human shit job at it. So let me just tell you instead. Now, insta-orders are really fucking stupid. You can do them throughout the night, but you really shouldn't. The game only needs you to complete 1 to finish the night, but the order has to be completed after you hit 6 a.m. And doing them during the night literally provides you no benefit aside from wasting your time. So just like wait until 6 a.m. to do them. The next thing we have to do once it's actually time to do the order is to establish a web line or something. To do that, all you have to do is open the monitor and press Q to open the additional monitor. Now, you might be wondering why I told you that you need to press Q. I never talk about the keybinds in FNAF games unless they're really fucking dumb. Well, that should have been the key takeaway there because this keybind is really dumb. The reason it's so dumb, well, I'm not kidding. The game quite literally never tells you about the additional monitor. It's not even hidden in some random paragraph. I read all of it. It literally doesn't tell you. You're just supposed to figure it out. Anyways, once you figure that out, open the webline menu and just wait for the connection to be established. The reason we need to do this is because if we don't have a secure webline, then the game can actually give us fake progress on our insta orders, which would mean that we could think we're making progress when we're just not. So that's fun. Always establish a connection, kids, especially with your runaway deadbeat dad. After we establish the connection, we just press the insta order button and wait for it to be done. After that, we should complete the night. However, something I should mention about both establishing a connection and completing an order is that the amount of time it takes for these actions to complete are completely fucking random and could take forever if you get really unlucky. And you can't close the monitor while these things are happening. So if an animatronic spawns during it, you will just lose. Amazing. All right, now let's move on to talking about the threats introduced. Keep in mind that each of them are dealt with in a completely different way, and each of them are located in a completely different spot on the map that takes 400 years to get to, and everything is RNG based and sucks dick. Got that? Cool. let's talk about the first threat, Subject 1 Freddy. You know Freddy will spawn when you hear this sound cue. Once we get to Freddy, we will see him playing the piano like Beethoven. I think Beethoven played the piano. I don't know. That could be wrong. I really don't know. All we have to do is open up our monitor and select Song Data Bank. From there, all we have to do is correctly select which song Freddy is playing. He will be playing one of 4 songs, and of course, there's no way to know which one is which unless you already know them. I'm not gonna waste your time playing all of them for you, but just know that this is some bullshit trial and error. Once you choose the right song, Freddy will fuck off. The next threat we're going to talk about is Subject 2 Foxy. The way he works is pretty interesting, but that's because he has 2 forms of attack. The first is really easy and is literally just Freddy, but easier. You will hear a sound cue that will play a random hertz number.
440 hertz.
Once you hear it, all you have to do is go over to Foxy's curtain, open your monitor, and go to sine waves and press whichever hertz number you heard. His other attack, however, is where it gets interesting. Once again, you will hear a sound cue, except this time it will just tell you to go to Foxy's stage.
Foxy aggression detected. Move to Foxy's stage.
Once you get there, you'll notice that you can't see Foxy poking his head out of the curtains like you saw last time. What you have to do is open up your monitor and then open the extra monitor and click cameras. This will show a camera inside of Pirate's Cove. You'll have to wait for Foxy's eyes to disappear, then close your monitors and click at the button at the bottom of the screen that says declare missing Foxy eyes. And of course, if you were wondering, the game literally doesn't tell you this fucking button exists at all. So that's just cool. Next up, I want to talk about Subject 3 Chica, who, I'll be honest, I still don't really understand how she works, but dealing with her is super easy. And I know that doesn't make sense, but just shut the fuck up. It'll make sense in just a second. When Chica attacks, she will make this sound cue.
Tower is now being brought into stage.
Once she does, all you have to do is go over to her section of the building, open the monitor, select override power, and then press cut, and this will make her go away. That's literally it. You might be wondering how I'm confused about that if I just explained it, but lucky you, that's what this next part of the video is all about. The reason why Chica confused me so much is the unbelievable amount of other shit that we can do to interact with her. To start, you can use oxygen removal, which will prevent Chica from killing us for 90 seconds, but will also force us to wear our mask, which, by the way, I know I haven't mentioned, but shut up, and we'll have to wear that mask the whole 90 seconds. We could also use something called a temporary fix, which will make Chica literally disappear for the rest of the night. However, from that point forward, every hour in game has a 1 in 4 chance of killing us immediately. We can use something called Prevent, which will stop Chica from ghosting for 120 seconds, but as a result, she'll become more hostile. And if you don't know what ghosting means, me too, bro. What ghosting means is that she'll just damage your mask. You might ask how we know that she's damaging it, and when she damages it. Maybe there's a sound cue, maybe there's a... Nope! The game just doesn't fucking tell us, so I have no idea, and I can't answer that question. So my main question is just, why the fuck does all this extra shit exist? You literally don't have to use any of it. Dealing with Chica is so simple, there's actually no point in using any of it at all, and in all honesty, we'll probably end up making the night more difficult if you do, rather than just dealing with her normally. And finally, we get to talk about my least favorite character, Subject 4 Bonnie. Easily the most confusing character in the entire night. Except unlike Chica, he's confusing because it's actually him who's confusing, and not all of the mechanics. Bonnie is pretty much just Freddy, but a little bit different. Where when you're dealing with Freddy, he'll play one of 4 different songs. Bonnie will instead play the same song with just 4 different versions of it. If that was confusing, that's what I meant. His song sounds like this. In our monitor, we can see 4 different buttons that relate to the 4 different versions of the song that Bonnie can play. Yes, I want to die. Thank you for asking. These buttons are with drums, without drums, normal pitch, and low pitch. But of course, this game has to make these buttons as confusing as possible and literally have them make no sense at all. Because if we hear the song without drums, instead of pushing the without drums button, we actually have to push the with drums button because fuck you in the face with my fat steamy balls. And of course, if we hear the song playing with drums, we have to push without drums. If we hear the song playing in a low pitch, we have to press normal pitch. And would you believe me if I told you that if we hear the song playing in a normal pitch, that we also have to press normal pitch, making the low pitch button literally completely fucking worthless. What the fuck is going on? What could have possibly been going through the dev's mind when creating this aside from black tar heroin? And of course, we don't get to hear the normal version of Bonnie's song at any point. So you just have to guess what the fuck low pitch and with and without drums even sounds like. So more trial and error. Hooray! However, there is one way to prevent Bonnie from being able to attack you by using a deterrent plush. It can only be placed when Bonnie isn't active. And you do this by going up to a stage and just placing it there. This will prevent him from spawning for 30 seconds, and with each subsequent place, it will become less and less effective before it just doesn't work at all. Before we move on, I need to complain about some bullshit that makes my dick hurt. If we look at the top corner of the screen, we'll see 3 percentages. Just ignore oxygen and condition because you're not even going to notice them, I promise. What matters is attention. Attention will increase whenever you do literally anything. Pulling up the monitor, moving around, doesn't matter. It will increase. If at any point this meter reaches 15%, all of the animatronics will become much more aggressive. And with it taking 9 fucking seconds to move between rooms, when they're this aggressive, you're going to lose every single time. And the best part? That is never once explained by the game. It never tells you that reaching 15% is basically a game over. It only tells you to be wary of your attention meter. What kind of fucking tutorial is this? Are you retarded? This is the equivalent of when AAA studios test their games on top of the line equipment and then release a game that nobody can play because they don't have a $12 million supercomputer. God damn it, bro. Just explain shit better, for the love of fuck. Now let's move on to the bonus objectives. 2 of them are pretty damn easy. The first has us encounter Chica while she's ghosting. So just like enter her room a bunch and you'll get it. And the next one is completing the night with optimal mask damage or whatever. Just use the mask as little as possible and don't use it while Chica's ghosting. Pretty easy. The next objective is a little bit harder. That being completing the night without the plushie losing its effectiveness too much. That's referring to the Bonnie plushie, since I haven't mentioned another plushie, you dumbass. You can get away with using the plushie 3 times throughout the night before you lose this objective. So just like only use it 3 times. The final objective is kind of the hardest one, just a little bit different. Something I haven't mentioned during this night are the 2 specials that you can activate on your additional monitor. Both of them can only be used once during the night. And this final objective has us complete the night without using the second life special. The second life special is just a second life. If you die, you'll respawn, but the clock will be set back by a single hour. So not doing that is pretty easy. Just don't do it. I'll mention the other special since we're talking about them, even though they don't affect this objective. It's called silent mode, and it just makes no percentage be added to our attention for 35 seconds. Yeah, always use this one. There's no downside to it. All right, it's time to talk about the single reason why I never wanted to cover this game, Night 6. Night 6 has a whopping 18 fucking animatronics to deal with, and they're all bullshit. And on top of that, the tutorial screen before this night is 5 fucking pages long. Oh my god, I don't want to read all that. But I'm making this video, so obviously I read all of it, or else I wouldn't be able to tell you what you have to do. Let's start by talking about the map. Thankfully, the map is only 1 room. I was thinking it was gonna be fucking massive, but at least that's something I don't have to worry about. The way we complete this night is by surviving until 6 a.m., but that's not it. Even after we get to 6 a.m., we still have to survive another 200 seconds, making this night a total of 12 fucking minutes long. Oh my god, kill me. On top of that, we have to do another insta-order, except just like the last one, we can't do it at all until the survival task has been completed. Amazing. However, I do actually have some good news for you. This night is split into multiple sections, and 3 of those sections have checkpoints, so not all hope is lost. But don't let that fool you. This is by far still the hardest night in the entire game. The first section is from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. and has us go up against the subject animatronics from night 5. Section 2 is from 2 to 4 a.m. and has us go up against Remnant Puppet, Miniature Puppet, Remnant Balloon Boy, Remnant Ballora, Miniature Baby, and Miniature Balloon Boy. So yeah, pretty much just everything all at once. I love it. After beating this section is where we get our first checkpoint. Then we move on to section 3, which is from 4 4 to 6 a.m. and has us deal with Revenant Freddy, Revenant Bonnie, Remnant Foxy, and Remnant Chica. And after this section, we also get another checkpoint. And finally, we move on to section 4, which is just those final 200 seconds, which have us defend ourselves from 2 new threats called Revenant's End and Amalgabot. I'm not excited for those two, but we'll talk about them in a little bit. Let's start with section 1 and Freddy. Freddy will appear in the vent walkway's view. To get rid of him, all we have to do is open our monitor and press the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 in quite literally any order. It doesn't matter, so I don't even really know why they're numbered. I guess the dev was just running out of ideas at this point. Foxy is also really easy. He'll appear in this area. Don't even remember the name, don't really care, and I doubt you do either. All you have to do is press the load voice on our monitor and he'll go away. Once again, they're running out of ideas and it's really showing. The only problem with Foxy is that he's really far away from everybody else, and after pressing the button, you have to wait like 10 seconds before you can continue. Chica is also incredibly easy. She'll appear at the prototype table, and if we happen to see her little doggies peeking out from behind the table, all you need to do is pull out your Chica plushie and turn it around. Yes, turning it around is a different action from pulling it out. Don't ask me why. This will cause her to go away. Again, super easy. I see why there's no checkpoint at the end of this section. Bonnie is the last character in this section, and he's by far the hardest. Just like Night 5, he'll play his stupid song and you have to press a button correlating to what the song sounds like. Except this game, of course, had to change the way this shit works for some reason. The buttons this time are normal pitch, low pitch, with drums, and glitched guitar. Except unlike last night, where we had to press the opposite button most of the time, this time we actually have to press the correct button because fuck you. This section also mentions 2 additional characters, Golden Freddy and Shadow Freddy. However, I'll talk about Golden Freddy later since he's always active, and from what I could tell from watching a few different playthroughs of this game, because again, I was unable to do it for myself without getting very sick. I never once saw anybody see Shadow Freddy, so I'm just gonna assume he's bugged. Now we get to move on to section 2, which is much fucking harder than section 1. Like, a lot fucking harder, oh my lord. Let's just start by talking about Remnant Balloon Boy. He appears at the communication area. He will slowly open up his chest throughout the night, and all you have to do is click it every once in a while to stop him from boinking us. The next threat is Miniature Puppet, who can spawn on your cameras at random. Of course. Oh yeah, there are cameras on this night. I just didn't say that because it wasn't relevant before. All you gotta do is stare at him and he'll eventually disappear. Just to find them on the camera character because I hate my life. Miniature Puppet doesn't kill us if we fail to do so. He just becomes an annoying hallucination on our screen. And to get rid of him, we have to stare at Golden Freddy's stage. And I'll explain why that's a problem a bit later. Miniature Baby is who I'll talk about next, and she's probably the easiest character here. Just like the previous night she was in, all you have to do is look through memories for good ones whenever she attacks and she'll go away. This has the same problem as her last problem, so I'm not gonna mention it and just move on because this video is already long enough. Remnant Puppet is another pretty easy character. He only spawns on camera 5, and if you ever see him there, just press the button in the corner that changes the camera position and he'll go away for some reason. Since you'll be checking for the other puppet all the time, this guy really shouldn't be a problem. The next character I want to talk about is Miniature Balloon Boy, who is just really fucking annoying. He will want to play a game called Hide and Listen. Not quite the name of the game, but he tried his best. When he wants to play it, you have to hide under the table with him. Once you hear him leave, you can get out from under the table, and congrats! You've just played the most boring game of all time. The final character during this section is Miniature Ballora, who is pretty much just Foxy from the first section. She appears in the same area, except instead of pressing one button, we have to open the side panel and press a different button. Oh, wow. Section 3 is where it starts to get fucking insanely hard. Revenant Bonnie is probably the easiest, so let's start with him. He spawns at either the Foxy Ballora place or on Golden Freddy's stage. For both of these, all you have to do is open your camera and launch a drone to distract him because his autistic interest is drones, and that's it. Revenant Freddy is the next character I want to talk about, and I'll be honest, compared to like all of the other characters on this night, he is so much more complicated for like no reason at all. When he spawns at the prototype table, he will be playing music. You have to listen for when his song plays 2 of the exact same notes. When he does, you'll have to use those Freddy buttons from earlier, except instead of pressing them in any order, you have to press them from largest to smallest. After doing so, you then need to open the camera and reset the song from there. Why is that reset song button in the cameras instead of the monitor? I literally have no fucking idea. I really just want to be done writing. I've been doing this for the last 5 hours. I'm not even joking.
I've been scripting for the last 5 fucking hours. The script here, you see, look, that's what I said, oh wow, and then I told the editor to put this video right here, isn't that cool? And we got a cat down here. What's up, kitty? Yeah, you heard that? That was her saying, it's some fucking bullshit, stop writing. I'm like, bro, I wanna. Damn.
Remnant Foxy is super similar to Freddy because he's also complete bullshit. He will spawn under the table, and when he does, we also need to get under the table with him, I guess. I don't know why. From there, we need to open the cameras, which will now for some reason display his memories instead of cameras. What the fuck is going on? Once there, we need to select a negative memory, and that will scare him away. Do you got all this? I hope so, because if you don't, you wouldn't be able to play this game for yourself, because I had to extract this shit from mountains of text. Meanwhile, I'm just spoon feeding it to you. The final threat in this section is Remnant Chica, who is probably the easiest. She works the same as Subject 3 Chica. When you see her, just show her the plushie and she'll leave. The only actual problem is that you need to be really fucking fast when she spawns. And finally, we can move on to talking about the hardest section throughout this entire night, with the characters Revenant's End and Amalgabot. Let's start by talking about Revenant's End, since he is by far the most difficult and leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and I really just want to forget about him. Revenant's End has 3 different ways to attack us, all with different ways of dealing with him. The first place he can attack is in an elevator I've just not mentioned so far. When you get to the elevator, you can open the doors to see if he's there. If he's not, you'll see 2 plushies. If you actually do see him, you'll have to close the doors, wait 3 seconds, and then reopen them. Repeat this until you see him standing up, and then you can walk away. The other 2 ways he can attack are pretty much the same. The first has him spawn near Golden Freddy. We need to turn to the vent view of Golden Freddy's stage and play a voice lure from the monitor to lure him away. Once he's there, we get rid of him in the exact same way that we get rid of him in the third way. And the third way is having him just spawn next to the vents themselves. When he does, 4 buttons will appear in the corners of your screen, and you need to press them in a Z pattern to close a mask over your face, which will scare him away. Amalgabot also has 3 different ways to attack, and from what I could tell, he always seems to attack right after Revenant's End. The first attack is really easy. He spawns by the communications post, and all you have to do is put your mask on, and it'll scare him away for some reason. The second way he attacks makes me want to kill myself. He'll spawn at the table, and we'll have to open up our cameras and search them until we find a stop music button that appears on one of them at random. I'm sure you can tell why I don't like this attack. We have to spam click this button until it disappears, which, yes, by the way, is entirely luck-based, and then he'll go away. His final attack is pretty much exactly the fucking same. He'll spawn under the table, and we have to go under there with him. From there, we have to open the cameras and find another randomly spawning button and click it, and he'll go away. Great. More RNG. Love it. And of course, now is the time that I should talk about Golden Freddy, who has been attacking us this entire time. He is obviously on his stage, and every once in a while his music will become unstable. When that happens, we just have to go over to his speakers and decrease the volume, and you're done. If you were expecting him to be super ass and insanely interesting, you're probably disappointed, because that's literally it. You might be thinking that all that's left to be talked about is the bonus objectives, but you'd be wrong, because there's actually a fuck ton more during this night that the game quite literally never fucking mentions. To start, let's talk about the metric shitload of fuck in the top corner of the screen. Attention, oxygen, and condition are exactly the same as in Night 5, so we'll just skip those. The first real mechanic is power. It constantly goes down no matter what you do, but if you go to the communication table, you can increase it by 10% just by pressing a button and waiting. The next one is radiation exposure, which I've literally never seen anybody increase no matter what they've done, so I really don't know what to say about that. And once again, the game doesn't tell you either. And the final one is health, which will only ever decrease when Minotaur Puppet is doing her hallucination thing. That's why I don't like her, by the way. I could have said that when I was talking about her, but fuck you. Also inside of our monitor, we have 3 repair buttons that do literally nothing, and 2 specials. One that gives us unlimited power for 30 seconds, and another that does the silent mode thing for 35 seconds again. So yeah, just use them both because they're good. Okay, I kind of lied about the repair buttons being useless. Repair leaks is actually useful. Occasionally, at random, a gas leak will happen to drain our oxygen and kill us, so use this button to fix it. That's it. The other 2 are actually useless though. There is still a lot more shit, honestly. Like probably another 20 minutes of shit to mention. I'm not even kidding. Like this weird virus thing near the Foxy area. But I seriously just want to be done talking about this game. And in all honesty, these extra things really aren't interesting or impactful at all. Finally, we can talk about the bonus objectives, which aren't really that bad, except 2 of them, which actually do suck dick and balls. The 2 easy ones are beating the night without any specials. You don't really need the specials to beat the night, so that's not really that big of a problem. And the other is to beat the night without passing 10% radiation. Again, I've never seen anybody get any radiation, so that also isn't really a problem. The bonuses that actually get hard start with beating the night without reaching 22% attention. With how much shit you have to do to complete this night, it's obviously going to be hard as shit. And the final bonus objective is by far the hardest and brings up another character I've mentioned twice during this night already. That being completing the night without going below 80% health. Basically, that just means you can never be attacked by Miniature Puppet, since if she becomes a hallucination, it is literally impossible to not go below 80% health. This is why I told you guys to really make sure you're focusing on her, because otherwise you won't be able to get this objective. But that's way fucking easier said than done, since the second section where Miniature Puppet is present probably has the most shit to do out of any other section. So you're pretty much going to get no time to actually check for her. So have fun. I know I wouldn't. And yes, before you guys say anything, I know that this game has a fuck ton more shit to do in the post game, with a lot harder nights filled with a bunch more bullshit that will make me want to cry. But this video is already so fucking long, and I've been scripting for no joke the last 7 hours straight. Yeah, when I told you I was done with 5 hours of scripting like 10 minutes ago, it actually took me 2 more hours to script from that point to this point. There was that much shit to look up. I need to be done. Plus, I don't want to hand my editor a long as fuck video. He's already going to hate me for what we have already. But if you really want to see me cover the rest of this game, which I promise will be another very fucking long video, probably the same length of this video, if not longer, then let me know in the comments below, and if this video gets enough views, then I'll gladly do it. But that's the main game of Post Shift 2 and what it has to offer. This game has the reputation of being the hardest FNAF game ever made, and while that's obviously literally not true, I can totally understand why people feel this way. It isn't just a max mode that's hard. It's literally the entire game, the whole way through. While I think this game is actually really cool as a concept, especially with all the post game and bonus objectives, which is the type of stuff I eat up, I can totally understand why this game has left such a massive mark on the community. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think that Post Shift 2 is completely overrated and people need to shut the fuck up about it? Let me know in the comments below. In my Bondi's Barnyard video, I asked you guys a completely retarded question that I'm not going to repeat here, and I'm not going to entertain the answers of. The question of this video is, what do you think is truly the hardest FNAF game overall, not just because of the max mode alone, and why? With the question of the video being asked, subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it a lot. Thank you to these 3 talented artists for your fan art. You can submit yours in the Discord, link in the description. Thank you to my super fan channel members. Knowing you guys exist is what got me through this video. I've been Dexter, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya!